Chapter 1. The night she ran, the rain tasted like iron. Elara didn't know if it was the storm or the blood in her mouth from biting her lip too hard, but she ran anyway, her bare feet slapping against wet cobblestones as the city blurred around her. Behind her, the wedding she'd abandoned still blazed with candlelight and false promises. Ahead, only darkness waited. She'd made it 3 blocks before she realized she was being followed. Not by Marcus. Aroma's husband wouldn't chase her himself. He'd send his brothers, his cousins, anyone willing to drag her back and salvage his reputation. The Whitmore family didn't tolerate public humiliation, especially not from a woman with nothing but a dead father's debts and a stubborn heart. But the footsteps behind her weren't heavy enough to be Marcus's men. They were nearly silent. Breath caught as she ducked into an alley between 2 shuttered buildings, pressing herself against the cold brick. The rain hammered down, soaking through her cream silk gown, the one she'd been forced to wear, the one that cost more than her father's funeral. She should have felt cold. Instead, her skin burned with panic and something else she couldn't name. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then a voice, low and male, cut through the storm. Running, in a wedding dress. How very dramatic. Elara's head snapped toward the sound. At the mouth of the alley stood a figure dressed entirely in black coat shirt, even his gloves. The rain didn't seem to touch him. Or perhaps it simply knew better. His face remained shadowed beneath the wide brim of his hat, but she caught the gleam of his eyes, dark, unblinking, fixed on her with the patience of something that had all the time in the world. "Leave me alone," she said, trying to sound braver than she felt. "I'm not the one chasing you." He tilted his head slightly, a gesture too fluid to be entirely human. "But they are 3 streets over, coming fast." Her heart lurched. "How do you? I can hear them." He stepped closer, and the street lamp behind him caught the edge of his jaw, sharp, pale, beautiful in a way that made her stomach twist. "You have 2 choices. Go back to your wedding and whatever prison waits for you there, or come with me. I don't know you." No, his mouth curved, not quite a smile, "But you know what waits behind you, and I promise, whatever I am, I'm less dangerous than a man who thinks he owns you." Elara's hands clenched in the wet silk of her skirt. She'd spent her entire life making careful choices, weighing consequences, trying to survive in a world that punished women for wanting more than they were given. And where had it gotten her? To a church altar, about to bind herself to a man who looked at her like property. The shouts grew louder, closer. "Why would you help me?" she demanded. The stranger's eyes caught the light again, and this time, she saw them clearly, not brown or black, but a deep crimson that shouldn't exist in nature. "Because," he said softly, "you're about to bleed." She looked down. Her feet, torn from running barefoot through the streets, left dark prints on the wet stones, blood mixed with rainwater, pooling around her ankles. "And blood," he continued, his voice dropping to something hungry and controlled at once, "has a way of complicating things." Before she could respond, before she could think, rough hands grabbed her from behind. She screamed, twisting. But one of Marcus's cousins, Thomas, she thought, though panic made recognition difficult, had her by the arms. "Got her. She's here." The stranger moved. Elara barely saw it happen. One moment Thomas held her. The next, he was against the opposite wall, pinned there by a hand around his throat. The stranger hadn't seemed to cross the distance, he'd simply been there, faster than her eyes could track. "Let her go." Each word fell like a stone into dark water. Thomas made a choking sound, his face purpled. What are you? Something you don't want to anger." The stranger's voice remained calm, almost bored, but his grip didn't loosen. "Tell your master the woman is under my protection now. Tell him House Thornwood has claimed her. Tell him, if he pursues this further, he'll discover exactly why humans don't enter our territories after dark." House Thomas's eyes went wide with terror. "Oh God. Oh Christ." Wrong prayer. The stranger released him, and Thomas collapsed to the cobblestones, gasping, "Run, before I change my mind about letting you live." Thomas ran. Elara stood frozen, her mind trying to process words that didn't make sense. "House Thornwood, our territories, letting you live." The stranger turned back to her, and in the lamplight she finally saw his face clearly, aristocratic features that belonged in a painting. Skin too pale to be natural, and those eyes crimson and ancient and utterly inhuman. Her voice failed. "Yes," he offered his hand, palm up, a gesture of choice rather than demand. "My name is Cassian Thornwood, and you, little runaway bride, have just become very interesting to people who should never have noticed you." Thunder rolled overhead, the rain fell harder. Elara looked at his offered hand, at the empty alley behind her, at the blood still seeping from her feet. She thought of Marcus, of the life she'd almost accepted, of all the careful, safe choices that had led her to this moment soaked, bleeding, alone, and she took the vampire's hand. His skin was cool against hers, not cold but not quite warm either, like touching marble that had been sitting in shade. His fingers closed around hers with careful pressure, as if he knew exactly how fragile human bones were. Good, Cassian said quietly. Now run with me, and this time, try to keep up. He pulled, and Elara ran not away from something anymore, but toward whatever darkness waited ahead. Chapter 2, The House of Shadows. They didn't run through streets. Cassian pulled her into the shadows between buildings, and the world shifted. Elara felt the air thicken, felt her stomach drop as if she'd stepped off a cliff, and then they were somewhere else, entirely a cobbled courtyard she didn't recognize, surrounded by walls too high to climb. She stumbled, gasping, her hands still locked in his. What? How did you shadow walking? He released her carefully, as if she might shadow, a useful skill when one wishes to avoid sunlight and questions. His gaze dropped to her feet. You're still bleeding. Elara looked down. The cuts had deepened during their impossible journey, leaving dark smears across pale stone. The pain hit her all at once, sharp and demanding. I can heal that, Cassian said, his voice oddly neutral, but it requires permission. Permission for what? My blood has properties that accelerate human healing. A few drops on the wounds, nothing more. He paused, studying her face. But I won't touch you without consent. Those are the rules I live by. She should have been terrified, should have screamed, run, done anything except stand there considering his offer. But the pain in her feet was intensifying, and something about the way he'd said permission, as if it mattered, as if she mattered, made her nod. Double quotes. Yes, please. Cassian knelt before her, a gesture so unexpected that Elara forgot to breathe. He removed one glove, revealing long fingers and pale skin marked with scars she couldn't quite see in the darkness. Then he lifted his other hand to his mouth and bit down on his own wrist. The scent hit her first, copper, and something darker, richer, almost intoxicating. Blood welled from the small wound, and he held his wrist over her feet, letting crimson drops fall onto the cuts. The effect was immediate. Warmth spread through her skin, knitting tissue together with a sensation that was equal parts relief and strangeness. Within seconds, the pain vanished. How she stared at her unmarked feet. No scars, no blood, nothing but clean skin. Vampire blood is potent. He stood, wiping his wrist on a black handkerchief that appeared from his coat pocket. The wound had already closed. It heals, preserves, transforms, depending on quantity and intent. What you received was barely enough to matter. What you've witnessed, however, he met her eyes, that will matter considerably. I don't understand. You've seen me use my abilities. You've accepted my blood, even in healing form. You know what I am. Cassian gestured toward the building behind them, a massive structure of dock, stone, and Gothic arches that seemed to absorb rather than reflect moonlight, which means you cannot go back to your human life. Not yet. Perhaps not ever. The words should have frightened her. Instead, Elara felt something close to relief. I wasn't going back anyway, she said quietly. Something flickered in his expression, surprise, perhaps, or recognition. The wedding, the cage. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware that she wore nothing but a soaked silk gown in the middle of the night. Marcus Whitmore was going to, he said once we were married, I'd learn my place, that my father's debts meant I belonged to him. Her voice steadied. So I ran. Cassian watched her for a long moment, his face unreadable. And now you're here, in the grounds of House Thornwood, under my protection, whether you meant to claim it or not. What does that mean? It means, he said slowly, that you're safe from human threats. It also means you've become entangled in affairs you don't understand. Vampire politics, house rivalries, blood oaths, and ancient laws that govern my kind. He turned toward the building. Come, we'll discuss details inside, where you won't freeze to death. That would be terribly inconvenient after I've just healed you. Despite everything, the impossibility, the danger, the sheer insanity of her situation, Elara almost smiled. Is that vampire humor? Perhaps I've forgotten how. But she caught the ghost of amusement in his voice as he walked toward the entrance. She followed, her healed feet silent on stone that felt older than the city itself. Up close, the building revealed itself as something between a manor and a fortress. Narrow windows, Heavy doors, gargoyles, perched on corners like sentinels. No lights burned in any window. Cassian pushed open the main door without touching it. It swung inward on silent hinges, revealing an entrance hall lit by candles that floated in the air, suspended by nothing visible. Magic, Ilara whispered. Ancient craft. Not quite magic, not quite science. Vampires have had centuries to perfect our comforts. He gestured her inside. Welcome to Thornwood House. Try not to wander. Some rooms are temperamental. The interior stole her breath. Vaulted ceilings disappeared into shadow. Tapestries covered walls, depicting scenes she couldn't quite interpret. Ceremonies, figures with too bright eyes. Furniture sat arranged with precise care. Chairs that had never seen casual use. Tables polished to mirror brightness. Everything suggesting wealth, and age, and careful preservation. It felt like walking into a tomb that someone still inhabited. Do you live here alone? She asked. Yes. Cassian removed his coat, revealing a black silk shirt that made his pale skin seem luminous. House Thornwood was once larger, but circumstances reduced our numbers. Now there is only me. The loneliness in those words made Ilara's chest ache. I'm sorry, don't be. He draped his coat over a chair. Loss is the price of immortality. Everyone you love becomes temporary. Better to avoid attachments altogether. That sounds horrible. It's practical. But he wouldn't meet her eyes. You'll need dry clothes, food, rest. I'll arrange everything. He started toward a hallway, then paused. One rule, Ilara. While you're here, you don't leave the grounds without me. Do you understand? Because of Marcus, because of what Marcus's family will do when they realize who took you. His voice went cold. And because there are other houses who would very much like to know why Cassian Thornwood suddenly shelters a human woman. Some would see it as weakness, others as opportunity. He finally looked at her. Either way, you've painted a target on both our backs. Chapter 3. Questions in the dark. The room Cassian gave her belonged in a museum. Four-poster bed with velvet curtains, wardrobe carved with roses and thorns, a vanity mirror that reflected candlelight like captured stars, everything spotless, preserved, waiting as if the room's previous occupant had simply stepped out and never returned. Ilara stood in the center, still dripping, still processing. A soft knock preceded Cassian's entrance. He carried a bundle of dark fabric and set it on the bed without coming closer than necessary. These belonged to someone who won't miss them. They should fit well enough. His jaw tightened. Someone who left a long time ago. Before Ilara could press, he continued, there's a bathing chamber through that door. Hot water still runs. Some technologies we've maintained. Take your time. I'll have food waiting in the library when you're ready. He moved toward the door, then hesitated. The windows are sealed, not to trap you, but to keep others out. This house has protections, but they're strongest after dark. Don't try to open them. I won't. He nodded and left, the door closing with a whisper of displaced air. Alone, Ilara finally let herself breathe, let herself feel the weight of everything that had happened in the span of an hour. She'd fled her wedding, been rescued by a vampire, watched him threaten a man with casual cruelty, accepted his blood, entered his house. Any rational person would be terrified, but standing in this frozen time room, Ilara felt something else entirely, the dizzying freedom of having nothing left to lose. The bathing chamber proved as impossibly elegant as everything else. Porcelain tub, brass fixtures, hot water that emerged from taps without visible pipes. Ilara sank into it gratefully, washing away rain and blood and the ghost of Marcus's cologne that had clung to her dress. The clothes Cassian provided fit surprisingly well. Black trousers that moved like silk, a deep crimson shirt with buttons made of bone or ivory, and a fitted jacket with silver clasps. She studied herself in the mirror, dark hair loose around her shoulders, eyes too bright with exhaustion and adrenaline, dressed like something from another century. She looked like she belonged here. That thought should have disturbed her. The library sprawled across 2 floors, connected by a spiral staircase. Books lined every wall, thousands of them, their spines bearing titles in languages Ilara didn't recognize. Cassian stood beside a table near the fireplace, where flames burned without apparent fuel, arranging items with precise care. Bet, he said without looking up. Cheese, dried fruit, wine, if you want it, though I'd recommend water first. You've had a shock. Ilara approached slowly. You don't eat. No. He gestured for her to sit. But I remember the mechanics, and the necessity. She sat, suddenly aware of her hunger. The food tasted real, solid, grounding. Cassian remained standing, watching her with the stillness, of someone who'd forgotten how humans needed to fidget. You have questions, he said. Finally. Hundreds. Ask, I answer what I can. Ilara swallowed bread and wine, gathering courage. How old are you? 347 years. I was turned in 1678, during a winter that killed thousands. The vampire who made me thought I was dying anyway. He was right, technically. No emotion colored the words. Next question. Do you kill people? I have. His eyes met hers, unflinching. War, self-defense, protection of house interests. But I don't hunt innocents for sport, if that's what you're asking. I feed from willing donors who understand the exchange. Blood for gold, blood for protection, blood for healing. Consent matters, even among monsters. The honesty surprised her. Are there many like you, vampires who follow rules? Some. Not enough. Cassian moved to the fireplace, staring into flames that cast no warmth across his skin. There are 7 great houses that govern vampire society. Thornwood was one of them. Each house follows different philosophies about humans. Some see you as cattle, others as potential. A few, like mine, believe coexistence requires boundaries. What happened to your house? Ilara asked softly. You said you're alone. His shoulders tensed. 30 years ago, there was a purge. House Corvinauer, oldest rival accused Thornwood of protecting human rebels, who'd stolen vampire secrets. The accusation was false. But politics don't care about truth. We were attacked. Most of my family died. The survivors scattered. His voice went flat. I remained because someone had to hold the territory. Because running felt like admitting guilt. Because I'm stubborn and foolish and convinced that someday, I'll prove our innocence. Ilira's throat tightened. I'm sorry, you keep saying that. He turned, his expression unreadable. Why? Because loss is loss, whether you're human or vampire. Because being alone is... Come, she searched for words. I know what it feels like, to be surrounded by people who see you as something to use. Something shifted in his face, a crack in the carefully maintained control. Your almost husband, and his family, and everyone in my social circle who knew what he was, what he planned, and said nothing because appearances mattered more than my safety. Bitterness crept into her voice. So yes, I understand being alone in a crowded room. Cassian studied her for a long moment. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Terror, fainting, hysterics, perhaps. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. Instead, you're eating cheese in a vampire's library and asking about house politics. Would hysterics help? No. Then why waste the energy? Ilara met his gaze steadily. You said, I can't go back. That means I need to understand this world you've pulled me into. Fear can come later, when I have time for it. For the first time, Cassian smiled, a real smile, brief but genuine. You're going to be trouble, aren't you? Probably. Good. He moved back toward the table, and the smile faded, because in 3 days, the monthly house assembly meets. Every vampire lord in the territory will gather, and they'll all want to know why Cassian Thornwood, hermit of House Thornwood, suddenly has a human woman under his protection. His eyes found hers. We need to prepare you, and we need a story they'll believe. Chapter 4. Lessons in Blood and Lies. Morning came without sunlight. Elara woke in the 4-poster bed, disoriented until memory crashed back. The wedding, the chase, the vampire. She sat up, finding her borrowed clothes neatly folded on a chair she didn't remember using. Someone had entered while she slept. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she felt oddly secure, as if Cassian's presence was a ward rather than a threat. She dressed and ventured into the hallway. The house felt different by Dana Brighta. Exactly, but less oppressive. Distant sounds echoed from somewhere below. Running water, the clink of glass, movement. Following the sounds, she found Cassian in a room she hadn't seen before, study lined with maps and documents, lit by oil lamps that burned with steady flames. He stood at a desk, writing something in a leather journal with ink that looked too dark to be ordinary. He didn't look up. You slept 14 hours. Ilara glanced around for a clock and found none. Exhaustion and shock. Your body needed recovery. He set down his pen and actual quill. She realized Dan finally met her eyes. There's food in the kitchen, through the hall, second door on the left. Eat first, then we begin. Begin what? Your education. His expression was serious. If you're to survive the assembly, you need to understand vampire society, our rules, our hierarchies, the lies we'll need to tell. The kitchen was surprisingly modern compared to the rest of the house. Running water, a stove that worked, cabinets stocked with preserved foods. Elara ate quickly, her mind racing with questions. When she returned to the study, Cassian had cleared the desk and spread out a large parchment covered in intricate drawings, a family tree, she realized, but inverted names, branching downward instead of up, with symbols and notes in margins. The 7 great houses, Cassian began, without preamble. Memorize these, your life may depend on recognition. He pointed to the top of the chart. House Corvain, oldest and most ruthless. They believe vampires are apex predators, and humans exist to serve. Their lord is Victor Corvin, ancient, calculating, dangerous. He's the one who orchestrated my family's destruction. Stay far from him. His finger moved. House Sylvain, wealthy, concerned with appearances and political maneuvering. They'll pretend civility while plotting your downfall. House Moreau, military strength. House Ashford, scholars and archivists. House Knight, reclusive, but powerful when roused. That's 6, Elara noted. House Thornwood is the 7th. He tapped the bottom branch, where only his name remained. Once, we had influence. Now we have history, and a crumbling seat at the table. His voice carried no self-pity, only which brings us to our problem. Elara leaned closer. The assembly. Every house will question why I'm protecting you. Vampires don't act altruistically. Toward humans, there's always a reason. Politics, strategy, blood bonds. He met her eyes. We need to give them a reason they'll accept it. One that makes you valuable enough to leave alone, but not so valuable that they'll try to take you. What kind of reason? Cassian hesitated, something almost like discomfort crossing his features. In vampire society, there are formal arrangements, blood bonds, a human who regularly provides sustenance to a vampire, with consent and ritual. It's a recognized relationship, protected by law. The vampire gains a reliable source of blood without hunting. The human gains protection, wealth, and the vampire's healing properties. Understanding dawned cold and clear. You want them to think I'm your donor? It's the simplest explanation. Donors are common enough to be unremarkable, but respected enough to grant you safety. He watched her carefully. It would require some evidence. What kind of evidence? My scent on your skin, your scent in my home. Perhaps a visible mark. Donors usually wear their vampire's symbol. He gestured to his collar, where she noticed for the first time a silver pin shaped like a thorn-wrapped tower. And you'd need to know the protocols, how donors behave, the etiquette. Ilara's pulse quickened, though, whether from fear or something else, she couldn't say. Would you actually feed from me? No, the answer came immediately, firmly. Not unless you explicitly requested it, and perhaps not even then. This is theater, Elara, a performance to keep you alive. I won't take your blood without genuine consent, and consent given under duress isn't consent at all. The conviction in his voice steadied her. Then teach me. What do I need to know? Relief flickered across his face. First, the basics. A blood bond requires 3 elements: consent, exchange, and duration. The human must agree verbally, in front of witnesses. The vampire provides protection and compensation. The arrangement lasts a set term, usually a year, renewable. He began pacing, falling into what Elara recognized as a teaching rhythm. Donors are addressed respectfully by other vampires. Harming another's donor is grounds for blood feud. In public, a donor stands at their vampire's left side, the position of trust, since it exposes the vampire's heart. During formal gatherings, donors may speak if addressed, but generally remain observant. So I'm meant to be seen but not heard, in front of other houses. Yes, it's not about worthlessness, it's about strategy. Donors often gather intelligence through observation. The humans who survive longest in our world are the ones who listen more than they speak. He stopped pacing. Can you do that? Play a role, appear compliant while remaining yourself. Elara thought of the years she'd spent navigating Marcus's family expectations, smiling through dinners where men discussed her like property, agreeing to wedding plans that made her skin crawl. She'd performed for survival before. Yes, she said, I can do that. Cassian returned to the desk and opened a small wooden box. Inside lay a silver pendant on a delicate chain, the same thorn-wrapped tower from his pin, but smaller, more elegant. This is the Thornwood mark. Wear it always. It declares your protection to any vampire who sees it. He held it out, and Elara took it, feeling the weight of metal and meaning. The pendant was cool in her palm, beautifully crafted, ancient. There's more, Cassian said quietly. The assembly is in 3 days. Until then, you'll shadow me. Learn how I move, how I speak, how I interact with my world. We need them to believe we've been together for months, not hours. Months, Elara repeated. That's a lot of history to fake. Then we'd better start building it. He extended his hand, palm up, the same gesture from the alley, offering choice. Trust me. She clasped the pendant around her neck, feeling it settle against her skin like a brand. Then she took his hand. I'm trusting you with my life, she said. Try not to waste it. His fingers tightened around hers, cool and steady. I won't. Chapter 5. The weight of watching the days blurred into strange domesticity. Cassian kept odd hours asleep during brightest day, wakeful through dusk and dawn. Elara adjusted, rising when shadows grew long, learning to navigate the house by candlelight and instinct. He never slept in a coffin, she discovered. That was myth. Instead, he had a windowless chamber deep in the house, where darkness remained absolute. Light doesn't kill me, he explained one evening, as she followed him through the portrait gallery, but it weakens, makes me sluggish, vulnerable. Sunlight feels like carrying stones on my shoulders, bearable for minutes, unbearable for hours. Elara studied the paintings. They passed men and women, in centuries-old dress, all bearing the same pale features and unsettling eyes. Your family, yes. He stopped before a portrait of a woman with dark hair and kind eyes. My sister Lisette. She was turned 5 years before me, taught me everything about surviving this existence. What happened to her? His jaw tightened. The purge. She tried to protect the children, newly turned vampires, still learning control. Corvin's forces showed no mercy. He moved on, not looking back. She would have liked you. She always believed humans and vampires could build something better than fear. They walked in silence until Cassian stopped at a set of double doors. The ballroom. We'll practice here. Inside, the space stole Elara's breath. Vaulted ceilings painted with constellations, marble floors polished to mirrors, crystal chandeliers that hadn't held candles in decades. The room felt frozen, waiting for music that would never come. The assembly meets in a hall 3 times this size, Cassian said. Hundreds of vampires, all watching, all judging. You'll need to move with confidence. Stand correctly. Make eye contact without challenging authority. He gestured to the center of the floor. Show me how you walk. Elara crossed the ballroom, suddenly self-conscious. Her footsteps echoed too loudly. Again, Cassian said, but quieter. Vampires move silently. Our donors learn to match us. Think of it as gliding rather than walking. Weight on the balls of your feet. She tried again, and again. Each time, he corrected posture, pace, presence. It felt like learning a dance she'd never heard the music for. Better, he finally said. Now come here. We'll practice the formal positions. He stood in the center of the room, waiting. When Elara approached, he gestured to his left side. Here, close enough that our shoulders nearly touch. A donor doesn't cower behind their vampire, but neither do they challenge by standing forward. It's a statement. I trust this person with my life, and they trust me with theirs. Elara moved into position. The nearness felt strange. She could sense the coolness radiating from his skin, smell something like rain and old books on his clothes. Not unpleasant, just othered. When we're approached, Cassian continued, his voice low. You remain still unless I introduce you. If questioned directly, look to me first. A donor defers to their vampire in public, even if they argue in private. It's protocol, not submission. And if someone threatens me, then I handle it. Something dangerous entered his tone. No vampire touches another's donor without explicit permission. To do so is an unforgivable insult. They know this. They'll test boundaries with words, but rarely actions. Rarely isn't never. No. He met her eyes. Which is why you'll wear silver. From his coat, he produced a slender blade in an ornate sheath. Silver burns vampires. Doesn't kill us. That requires beheading or fire, but it causes immense pain. Keep this concealed but accessible. If anyone gets past me, use it. Elara took the blade, feeling its weight. Have you taught many humans to defend themselves against your kind? Only one. His expression shuddered. She died anyway. Before Elara could respond, Cassian stepped back. We'll practice greetings now. I'll play Victor. He'll certainly approach. He can't resist an opportunity to mock me. He straightened, and something transformed in him. His features hardened, his eyes went cold, and when he spoke, his voice carried centuries of disdain. Cassian Thornwood, still clinging to your crumbling house, I see, and with a petna. How quaint. The venom in his tone made Elara flinch, but Cassian, the real Cassian, caught her eye, and nodded. Respond. She straightened, remembering her instructions. Remain calm. Show no fear. Lord Corvin. She inclined her head exactly as Cassian had taught her, respectful, but not subservient. Adequate, Cassian said, dropping the character, but your heartbeat accelerated. Vampires will hear that. Fear is information they'll exploit. I'm not sure I can control my heartbeat. Then we practice until you can. He resumed his position. Again, this time, I'll be worse. They practiced for hours. Cassian played each houselord in turn, Corvain's cruelty, Sylvain's false charm, Moreau's blunt aggression. Each time, Alara learned to mask her reactions, to stand beside him like she belonged there, to navigate conversations laden with threats she was only beginning to understand. Finally, near dawn, Cassian called a halt. Enough. You're improving. Alara sank onto the edge of the ballroom, exhausted. I feel like I'm preparing for war. You are. He sat beside her, not touching, but close enough that she felt his presence like a cold current. Vampire politics are war by other means, words instead of weapons, status instead of blood. But make no mistake, Alara, people die in these games. She looked at him, really looked, saw the weariness beneath his controlled exterior, the loneliness he carried like armor. Why are you really doing this? Protecting me? Cassian was silent for a long moment. Do you know what I saw in that alley? A woman running from a cage, choosing the unknown over guaranteed suffering, choosing herself, even when it cost everything. His voice softened. I haven't seen that kind of courage in a long time. It seemed worth preserving. Something warm bloomed in Alara's chest, not attraction, not quite, but recognition. The sense of being seen by someone who understood what it meant to survive. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet. He stood, offering his hand. The assembly is tomorrow night. After that, you may wish you'd stayed at your wedding. Alara took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. Somehow, I doubt that, as they walked back through the silent house, the thornwood pendant rested cool against her skin, and Alara realized she'd stopped thinking of this place as a prison, that it was starting to feel like a refuge. Chapter 6, Blood and Truth. The night of the assembly arrived with a cold wind that rattled windows. Alara stood before the mirror in her room, barely recognizing herself. Cassian had provided a gown black silk that moved like water, cut in a style that belonged to no particular era. The thornwood pendant gleamed at her throat. Her hair fell in dark waves over bare shoulders. She looked like she belonged to his world. The thought no longer frightened her. A knock at the door. May I enter? Cassian's voice, carefully formal. Yes. He stepped inside and stopped. For the first time since she'd met him, his carefully maintained composure cracked. His eyes widened slightly, and something unguarded crossed his face before he mastered it. You look, he paused. Appropriate. The gown suits you. Appropriate, Alara repeated, almost smiling. High praise. I'm not accustomed to compliments. He moved closer, carrying a small velvet box. There's one more element. House Thornwood traditionally marks its protected humans. With your permission, he opened the box. Inside lay a silver cuff bracelet engraved with thorns. It's cold-forged silver. Any vampire who touches it will burn. A final defense. Alara extended her wrist. Cassian fastened the cuff with steady hands, his cool fingers brushing her skin. The contact sent an unexpected shiver through her. Are you afraid? He asked quietly, not releasing her wrist. Yes. She met his eyes. But I trust you. Something shifted in his expression, surprise, perhaps, or something deeper. His thumb traced the edge of the cuff absently, and Alara realized he was stalling. The legendary vampire lord, Nerval's Cassie. There's something you should know. He released her wrist, stepping back. About blood bonds, about what it means to wear my mark. He turned toward the window, his profile sharp against darkness. When a vampire and human form a genuine bond, not theater, but true connection, it changes things. The vampire becomes protective, possessive. Even our instincts awaken in ways that can be dangerous. Dangerous how? We're predators, Alara. No matter how civilized we pretend to be, the scent of our bonded human becomes intoxicating. Their heartbeat, a song we can hear across rooms. Their safety, an obsession. His hands clenched. I'm telling you this because you need to understand. If we continue this pretense, if we spend more time together, those instincts may blur the line between performance and reality. For me, Alara's breath caught, and for me, Humans can develop what we call blood fascination, an attraction to the vampire protecting them. It's biological, evolutionary. Your body, recognizing a powerful predator, and responding with misplaced desire. He finally looked at her. I'm warning you now, whatever you feel in the coming weeks, question it, don't trust it, it may not be real. The admission hung between them, raw and honest. What if I want to trust it? Ilara asked softly. Cassian's eyes flashed crimson. Then you'd be a fool. I've lived 3 centuries, Ilara. I've seen what happens when humans fall for vampires. It ends in transformation or death. There is no happy middle ground. You sound very certain. I am. But his voice wavered. I have to be. Before Ilara could respond, a bell tolled somewhere in the house, deep resonant. Summoning. It's time, Cassian said. Remember everything we practiced. Stay at my left. Speak only when necessary. And no matter what you see or hear tonight, don't run. Running marks you as prey. I won't run. He offered his arm, a gesture both formal and protective. Then let's face the wolves. They traveled by shadow walk again. That stomach-dropping shift through darkness. When reality solidified, Ilara found herself standing before a massive stone building that seemed to grow from the earth itself. Gothic arches, gargoyles, windows that reflected no light. The council, hall of the 7 houses. Other vampires emerged from shadows around them, pale figures in elegant dress, moving with inhuman grace. They all turned to stare at Cassian. At Ilara, whispers spread like poison through water. Thornwood brought a human. Is that his donor? How desperate has he become? Cassian's expression never changed, but his arm tensed beneath Ilara's hand. Together, they walked toward the entrance. Running a gauntlet of crimson eyes and predatory curiosity, inside the hall stretched vast and dark. Hundreds of vampires filled, tiered seating, arranged in a circle around a central floor. At the far end sat 7 thrones, 6 occupied, one conspicuously empty, Thornwood's throne. Cassian led Ilara to their place. She stood at his left as he took his seat, trying not to tremble under the weight of so many inhuman gazes. The air smelled of old stone and something metallic. Blood, she realized. Ancient bloodstains soaked into the floor. A vampire rose from the central throne, tall, silver-haired with eyes like frozen rubies. Victor Corvin. Even from a distance, Ilara felt the wrongness radiating from him. Pure, distilled malice, wrapped in aristocratic bearing. The 7 houses convene, Victor announced, his voice carrying effortlessly. We gather to address territorial disputes, blood crimes, and matters of common concern. His gaze locked on Cassian, and to question irregularities. Lord Thornwood, explained the human. Every eye turned to them. Cassian stood slowly, pulling Ilara with him. His hand found hers, cool and steady. House Thornwood has entered a formal blood bond. This is Ilara, my consented donor. She is under my protection, as the old laws guarantee. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. A donor, Victor said, descending from his throne. How convenient. And we're simply meant to believe this arrangement is legitimate, that she's here by choice, not coercion. He crossed the floor toward them, each step deliberate, threatening. Cassian's grip on Ilara's hand tightened in warning. Don't react. Victor stopped directly before them, studying Ilara with the detached curiosity of a man examining an insect. Tell me, little human, did you agree to this bond freely? Ilara's heart hammered, but she kept her voice level. Yes, Lord Corvay, I did. And you understand what you've agreed to, that you've bound yourself to a dying house, that you'll share Thornwood's fall when it comes in. It will come. I understand. Victor smiled, showing too many teeth. We shall see. The night is young, and the assembly has many questions. He returned to his throne, and Ilara felt Cassian finally exhale. The interrogation had only just begun. Chapter 7. Fire in the dark. The questions came like knives, precise and cutting. Lady Sylvain rose first, a beautiful vampire draped in jewels, her smile poisonous. Lord Thornwood, your house has been dormant for decades. No new bonds, no political alliances, no presence at court. Why this sudden return to society? And why with a human whose scent carries? She inhaled deliberately, wedding perfume and fear. Cassian's voice remained steady. My donor's previous circumstances are irrelevant to this assembly. What matters is that our bond follows all protocols. Consent given, protection offered, compensation arranged. Compensation, Victor interjected lazily. What could Thornwood possibly offer that a human would want? Your coffers are empty. Your house, a ruin. I offer what gold cannot buy. Cassian replied, safety from human monsters. The words landed like stones in water. Several vampires shifted uncomfortably. They understood the implication. Whatever Ilara had run from, it was worse than vampires. Lord Moreau stood, a warrior vampire, built like a siege engine. If the bond is legitimate, prove it. Let us see the mark. Ilara's stomach dropped. Mark, Cassian had mentioned Donna's wore their vampire symbol. But Cassian's hand moved to her shoulder. Fingers cooled against her skin. The mark is private, Moreau. You know the law. A donor's body belongs to herself and her bonded vampire alone. Convenient. Victor's eyes glittered. Or perhaps there is no mark. Perhaps this is theater, desperate play by a desperate lord to appear relevant. The assembly erupted in murmurs. Ilara felt the shift in the room, belief crumbling, suspicion sharpening. They were losing. Without thinking, she stepped forward. There is a mark, she said clearly. Every vampire froze. Cassian's hand tightened on her shoulder in warning, but Ilara pressed on. She'd learned in her old life that sometimes the best defense was audacity. Lord Thornwood has marked me according to tradition, she continued, her voice carrying across the hall. But he's also correct, my body is my own. If this assembly demands proof, I'll provide it. But know that you're asking a human woman to display herself before hundreds of strangers. Is that truly the honor the Seven Houses claim to uphold? Silence. Absolute, ringing silence. She'd gambled everything on one truth. Vampires valued ancient law above all else, and ancient law said donors had rights, including bodily autonomy. Lady Sylvain laughed, a sound like breaking glass. The human has teeth. How refreshing. She looked at Victor. I believe her, if only because that kind of courage cannot be faked. No coerced woman speaks so boldly. Other vampires murmured agreement. The tide was shifting. But Victor wasn't finished. Bold words cost nothing. Let's test this bond another way. He gestured, and two guards dragged a struggling figure into the center of the floor. Marcus Whitmore. Ilara's breath stopped. Her almost husband looked terrible, clothes torn, face bruised, eyes wild with terror. He scanned the crowd desperately until his gaze locked on her. Thank God, tell them there's been a mistake. Silence, Victor commanded, and Marcus choked on his words. We found this human skulking near our borders, asking questions about a woman who disappeared on her wedding night. He claims she was kidnapped, stolen by a vampire. Victor's smile was cruel. Tell me, Lord Thornwood, did you steal her? Cassian's entire body went rigid. Ilara felt rage rolling off him in waves, cold, controlled, lethal. I stole nothing, Cassian said, each word edged in ice. She came to me freely. This human has no claim on her. I have every claim, Marcus shouted, finding his voice. She's my fiancée. We were meant to marry. Her father owed my family a fortune. He was payment for his debts. The words hung in the air, ugly and damning. Ilara felt something crack open inside her, all the fear and shame she'd carried, transforming into pure fury. She stepped away from Cassian, standing alone in the space between vampire and human. I was never yours, she said, her voice shaking with rage. My father's debts don't make me property. The wedding contract was signed under duress. You threatened my mother's livelihood if I refused. You told me once we were married, I'd learn my place, that you'd teach me obedience. She turned to face the assembly. So yes, I ran. And yes, Lord Thornwood found me. But I chose his protection over that man's cage. I'd make the same choice 1,000 times. Marcus lurched forward, and the guards led him deliberately. Ilara realized. This was a test. You ungrateful. Do you know what you've cost me? The humiliation. My family wills. He reached for her. Cassian moved. One moment he stood at his throne. The next, he was between them, his hand around Marcus's throat, lifting him off the ground as easily as a child lifts a doll. His eyes burned pure crimson, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. You touched my donor. The temperature in the hall dropped. Every vampire leaned forward, sensing blood. Cassian, Ilara whispered. Don't. He didn't look at her. He violated protocol. Attempted assault on a bonded human. The punishment is clear, please. Ilara moved closer, her hand finding his arm. Please, he's not worth it. Let him go. Why? Cassian's grip didn't loosen. He would have hurt you. Owns you, he thought. Give me one reason not to end him. Because I'm asking you not to. She stepped in front of him, forcing him to meet her eyes. Because killing him makes you the monster they think you are. Because I don't want his blood on your hands, on my conscience. Something in Cassian's expression shifted. The rage banking, control returning, slowly, so slowly, he lowered Marcus to the ground and released him. Marcus collapsed, gasping. "You're banished from vampire territories," Cassian said coldly. "If you return, if you speak her name again, if you even think of I won't be merciful twice." He turned to Victor. "The human attacked my donor. I defended her. By law, I could have killed him. Instead, I showed restraint. Are there any other questions about the legitimacy of our bond?" Victor studied them both, his ancient eyes unreadable. Then, incredibly, he smiled. "No further questions, Lord Thornwood. Your bond is convincing." He waved dismissively. "Remove the human. Let him carry our warning to his kind." As guards dragged Marcus away, sputtering threats, Cassian turned to Elara. His hand found hers, trembling slightly. "Are you hurt?" "No." She squeezed his hand. "But you are." He looked confused until she gestured to his other hand, the one that had held Marcus. His palm was burned, blistering. The silver cuff she wore had touched him when she grabbed his arm. "You burned yourself," she whispered. "To stop, worth it," he said simply. And there, in front of the 7 houses, Elara understood the truth. This wasn't theater anymore. Chapter 8, The Breaking Point. They shadow walked home in silence. The moment they materialized in Thornwood House, Cassian pulled away from her, putting the length of the entrance hall between them. His burned hand hung at his side, already healing but still marked with silver burns. "That was reckless," he said, not looking at her. "Which part?" Elara's voice came sharper than intended. "Standing up for myself, or stopping you from committing murder." "All of it." He finally turned, and his eyes still held traces of crimson. "You stepped forward, challenged Victor, touched me while wearing silver. Any one of those actions could have gotten you killed, but they didn't. This time," he moved toward the stairs, his movements tight with barely restrained emotion. "You don't understand what you risked tonight." "What I risked? Then explain it to me." Elara followed him, anger rising. "You've spent days teaching me protocols and politics, but you won't tell me what's actually happening here, between us." Cassian stopped mid. "Nothing is happening between us. Liar." The word hung in the air like a blade. He turned slowly, and Elara saw something dangerous in his expression. Not the cold control he'd shown the assembly, but something raw, desperate. "Go to your room." "Elara, no, I'm not asking. And I'm not a servant." She climbed the stairs until they were aisle. "You warned me about blood bonds, about instincts and fascination, and lines blurring, but you're the one who can't look at me right now. You're the one who nearly killed a man for touching me. You're the one who's afraid." "Of course I'm afraid." The words exploded from him. "Do you know what I felt when he reached for you? Pure, absolute rage. The kind that makes vampires start wars. The kind that made me want to tear him apart and paint the walls with his blood." His voice dropped to something raw and broken. "I haven't felt anything in decades, Elara, and then you walked into my life, and suddenly I'm feeling everything." The confession shattered the space between them. "Cassian, you should leave." He turned away again. "Tomorrow, I'll arrange safe passage to another city. Enough money to start over. You'll be free of Marcus, free of me, free of all of this." "What if I don't want to be free of you?" He went utterly still. Elara stepped closer, her heart hammering. "You told me not to trust what I feel, that it's biology, instinct, blood, fascination, but I've spent my entire life being told what to feel, who to be, what to want. For once, I know my own mind." She reached out, her hand hovering near his shoulder. "I see you, not the vampire lord, not the last of House Thornwood. You, lonely, and grieving, and trying so hard to do the right thing that you're willing to send away the first person who makes you feel alive. You don't know what you're saying." "Yes, I do." Her hand settled on his shoulder, and he flinched but didn't pull away. "I'm saying I'm not leaving. I'm saying whatever this is between us, Rael, or fascination, or madness, I want to see where it goes. I'm saying I trust you." Cassian turned, and the look in his eyes stole her breath. Hunger and hope and fear, warring beneath iron control. "If you stay," he said quietly, "everything changes. The bond won't be theater anymore. Other houses will know. Victor will see you as a weakness to exploit. And his hand rose slowly, carefully, until his fingers brushed her cheek. "I won't be able to maintain distance. Won't be able to pretend you're just a human I'm protecting. You'll be mine, and I'll be yours, and there's no coming back from that." Good Elara leaned into his touch, feeling the coolness of his skin against her warmth. "I'm tired of pretending. For a long moment, Cassian simply stared at her, as if memorizing her face. Then, with aching slowness, he lowered his head until their foreheads touched. Not a kiss, something more intimate. Breath shared, space collapsed, walls crumbling. "You'll regret this," he whispered. "Let me." He made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. His arms came around her, pulling her close with a gentleness that contradicted his strength. Ilara felt his coolness seep through her clothes, felt his chest that didn't rise and fall, felt the impossible realness of being held by something that shouldn't exist. "I don't deserve you," Cassian said against her hair. "That's not your choice to make." They stood like that for a long time, vampire and human, entwined on a staircase in a house that had forgotten warmth. When they finally separated, something fundamental had shifted. The careful distance between them had collapsed. Cassian took her hand, the one wearing his silver cuff. "My hand is healed now, may I?" She nodded. He removed the cuff gently, setting it aside, then brought her wrist to his lips, not biting, just pressing his mouth to her pulse point, feeling her heartbeat against his skin. "I can hear this always," he murmured. "Your heart, it's been driving me mad since the moment we met. This fragile, human rhythm, so fast, so temporary, so precious." Ilara's breath caught. "Is this what you meant? About instincts?" "Yes." He lowered her hand but didn't release it. "Every vampire instinct I possess is screaming at me to keep you, hide you, protect you from everything, including myself. It's why I need you to understand I can't be casual about you, Ilara. It's all or nothing for my kind." "Then let it be all." His eyes flashed crimson again, but this time she didn't fear it. She understood it for what it was, not danger, but intensity, not threat, but passion held barely in check. "You have no idea what you've just agreed to," Cassian said. "Then show me." He smiled, truly smiled, rare and beautiful. "Carefully, I'll show you carefully, because you're mortal and breakable, and the most terrifying thing I've encountered in 300 years. Terrifying, absolutely." He lifted her hand to his lips again, this time pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "You make me want impossible things, like futures, like hope, like mornings I'll never see." Ilara felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm sorry, don't be. For the first time since my family died, I feel alive." He drew her close again. "Stay with me tonight, not as donor and vampire, just stay." "Where?" "The library. I'll show you my favorite books, tell you stories about the world before you were born, prove I'm more than just a monster in a crumbling house." Ilara smiled against his chest. "You've never been just a monster." "No," he agreed softly. "Around you, I'm something far more dangerous. I'm a vampire who's learning to hope again." Chapter 9. When Blood Speaks. 3 nights passed in fragile peace. Ilara woke each evening to find small gifts outside her door. Books Cassian thought she'd enjoy, a shawl against the house's perpetual chill, once a single black rose that somehow still held morning dew. They spent hours in the library, her reading while he worked through correspondence, the silence between them comfortable rather than tense. He taught her about vampire history, not the sanitized version from human folklore, but the truth. Wars fought over feeding rights, the purge of 1847 that nearly destroyed all 7 houses, the treaty that established modern protocols. His voice carried weight when he spoke of the past, as if each memory had physical form. She told him about her life before her father's slow decline into debt, her mother's desperate social climbing, the suffocating expectations that had shaped her into someone she didn't recognize. Cassian listened with the focus of someone who had centuries of practice in the art of attention. "You're not that person anymore," he said one night, looking up from a letter he'd been drafting. "How do you know?" "Because that person would have stayed at the wedding, would have accepted the cage." His eyes met hers across the library. "You chose the unknown, that takes courage most people never find." The words settled warm in her chest. But on the 4th night, everything shattered. Ilara woke to screaming. Not human screaming, something worse. The sound of wind that carried voices, of darkness that had teeth. She bolted from bed, pulling on a robe, and ran toward the source, the main hall. Cassian stood in the center, surrounded by shadows that moved with wrong geometry. 3 figures materialized from the darkness, vampires she recognized from the assembly. House Corvain's colors, Thornwood. The lead vampire smiled, showing fangs. "Victor sends his regards, and a message." Cassian's voice was ice. "You violate my territory. Explain quickly, before I forget." "Diplomacy. Your human was seen in the city, shopping, of all things, unescorted, unprotected. The vampire's smile widened. Such carelessness. Victor wonders if perhaps the bond isn't as strong as you claimed. If perhaps she's simply convenient fiction. Ilara's blood ran cold. She had gone to the market yesterday, just for an hour, needing fresh air and normalcy. Cassian had been asleep, and she'd thought foolishly. She now realized that daylight made her safe. She's mine to protect as I see fit, Cassian said, but something wavered in his voice. Doubt. Is she? The vampire circled slowly, because Victor received interesting information. This human Ilara Whitmore she's never been fed from. Her scent carries no trace of your venom. No bond mark burns in her blood. He stopped directly before Cassian. You're lying to the houses, and that, old friend, is a death sentence. Cassian's eyes blazed crimson. Get out, make us. The attack came faster than Ilara could process. The three vampires moved as one, and suddenly, Cassian was fighting, truly fighting. Bodies blurred through shadow. Furniture exploded. The sound of impact rattled her bones. Cassian was powerful, ancient, skilled, but 3 against 1. In his own home where he'd grown complacent, one of them got through his guard. Claws raked across Cassian's chest, tearing through fabric and flesh. He staggered, blood too dark to be human spilling across marble floors. The scent hit Ilara like a wall, copper and darkness and something that made her head swim. The attacking vampire laughed. Weak, House Thornwood dies tonight. They closed in for the kill. Ilara didn't think. She ran forward, placing herself between them and Cassian. The silver blade he'd given her appeared in her hand. She didn't remember drawing it. Touch him, she said, her voice shaking but clear, and I'll make you regret existing. The vampires stopped, stared, then laughed. The human has teeth, one mocked. How adorable. Silver burns us, little girl. It doesn't kill us. The lead vampire reached for her. Ilara slashed. The blade caught his hand, and he shrieked actual, genuine pain. Silver might not kill, but it hurt enough to matter. The wound smoked and blistered, refusing to heal. Next one goes for the throat, Ilara said, surprised by her own steadiness. I may not kill you, but I'll make you suffer. Want to test how much pain you can tolerate? Behind her, Cassian coughed. Ilara run. No, she didn't take her eyes off the vampires. I'm not leaving you. The 3 exchanged glances, calculating they'd come to deliver a message, not fight a protected human with silver. Victor wouldn't thank them for starting a blood feud over a wounded girl's defiance. This isn't over, the lead vampire hissed. Victor will demand proof. Real proof. You have 3 days to show the houses a genuine bond, or he'll call for your execution and her death. He smiled at Ilara, all fangs and malice. Enjoy your last nights together. They dissolved into shadow, and the hall fell silent except for Cassian's labored breathing. Ilara dropped the blade and turned. Cassian sat against the wall, his chest torn open, healing too slowly. The injury was worse than it looked. She could see bone through torn flesh. You're hurt, she whispered, kneeling beside him. I'll heal. But his voice was weak. You shouldn't have interfered. And let them kill you. Her hands hovered over his wound, uncertain. What do you need? How do I help? Blood. Word came reluctantly. I need blood to heal properly. I have reserves, but take mine. Cassian's eyes snapped to hers, shock breaking through pain. What? You heard me. Ilara moved closer, her pulse jumping. You need blood. I have blood. And if we need to show the houses a genuine bond in 3 days, we might as well start now. Ilara. No, I can't. I won't. You told me consent matters. I'm giving it, freely, completely. She touched his face, feeling the coolness of his skin. Please, Cassie, let me save you the way you saved me. His hand came up to cover hers, trembling. If I start, I might not be able to stop. Feeding is intense, especially the first time. I could hurt you, kill you. You won't. You can't know that. Yes, Ilara said firmly. I can, because I know you, because you've spent weeks fighting your instincts for my sake, because I trust you more than I've ever trusted anyone. She shifted, offering her wrist. Please, before you lose more blood. Cassian stared at her wrist like it was both salvation and damnation. Then, slowly, he brought it to his lips. Tell me to stop, he whispered against her skin. The moment it's too much. Promise me, I promise. His fangs extended. She felt them. Sharp points pressing against her pulse. Then pressure, a brief sting, and the world exploded into sensation. Chapter 10. The choice between world's heat and ice warred beneath her skin. Ilara gasped as Cassian's fangs pierced her wrist, as his mouth sealed over the wound, as her blood flowed into him. The sensation was nothing like she'd imagined. Not painful, not violating, but intensely intimate. She felt every pull, every swallow, felt it echoed through her entire body like ripples across water. Cassian made a sound against her wrist, half groan, half surrender. His free hand came to her waist, pulling her closer with desperate gentleness. She felt him healing beneath her touch, felt his chest knitting together, felt his strength returning with each heartbeat she gave him. The connection between them deepened. She sensed his emotions bleeding through guilt and need and something that felt achingly like reverence. Her blood was singing to him, calling to instincts buried under centuries of control. "Cassian," she breathed. He pulled back immediately, eyes wild with crimson fire. Her blood stained his lips. Too much. No. Her head swam, but not unpleasantly. Just intense. He looked at her wrist, at the 2 small puncture marks already closing. Then he brought her wrist to his mouth again, but this time he only kissed the wounds, his saliva sealing them completely. Within seconds, only faint pink marks remained. "You taste like starlight," he whispered, "like every beautiful thing I've forgotten existed." Ilara's breath caught. "Is that the bond talking?" "I don't know anymore." He cradled her wrist like it was something precious. "I don't care. All I know is that your blood just saved my life, and I'll spend the rest of my existence trying to be worthy of that gift." She touched his face, her fingers tracing his jaw. "You already are." Cassian pulled her fully against him, burying his face in her hair. She felt him trembling, this ancient, powerful creature, undone by her trust. His chest, now healed, pressed cool against her warmth. Their hearts beat in counterpointers, fast and living, his slow and eternal. "We're bound now," he said quietly. "Truly bound. My venom is in your blood, your essence is in mine. Every vampire in the territory will smell me on you, will know your claims." Good. Ilara settled against him, feeling exhaustion pull at her edges. Blood loss and adrenaline were taking their toll. "Let them know. Victor will demand more proof. He'll want to see the bond demonstrated, want evidence that can't be faked." Cassian's arms tightened around her. "Are you prepared for that? For what it means? Tell me." Bonded pairs feel each other's emotions. Your fear becomes my rage. Your pain, my agony, will be connected in ways that blur the line between individuals. His voice dropped. "And I'll become more possessive, more territorial. The feeding awakens something in me that I've kept dormant for decades." Ilara pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "I'm not afraid of you. You should be, because you'll protect me, because you feel things." She shook her head. "I spent years with people who felt nothing, who looked at me and saw only utility. You look at me and see a person. That's not something to fear. That's something to treasure." Something broke in his expression, the last of his resistance crumbling. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her jaw, each touch reverent and restrained. "How are you real? I could ask you the same thing." They sat together on the marble floor, surrounded by the wreckage of the fight, holding each other as dawn approached, unseen beyond sealed windows. Ilara felt her consciousness drifting, the blood loss pulling her towards sleep. "Rest," Cassian murmured, lifting her easily. "I'll take you to your room. Stay with me." He carried her up the stairs, his movements fluid despite his recent injury. In her room, he laid her gently on the bed and moved to leave. "Cassian." He stopped at the door. "You promised to stay. That night in the library, you said you'd stay." He turned back slowly. "That was before we were bound. Before I fed from you. Now." He gestured helplessly. "Now every instinct I possess is screaming at me to crawl into that bed and never let you leave it, to keep you safe and close and mine forever. I'm trying to give you space to reconsider, to realize what you've done." Ilara sat up, despite her exhaustion. "I haven't changed my mind, and I won't, so you can either stand in that doorway fighting yourself all day, or you can come here and hold me while I sleep. Your choice." For a long moment Cassian simply stared at her. Then he closed the door, removed his torn jacket, and crossed to the bed. He lay beside her on top of the covers, maintaining that last thread of propriety, and pulled her close. She settled against his chest, listening to the slow, steady beat of his heart. Not human quick, but not absent either. The rhythm of something caught between life and death, sustained by will and blood and time. "What happens in 3 days?" she asked sleepily. "We face the houses, prove our bond is real, survive whatever Victor throws at us." His hand stroked her hair absently. And then we figure out what comes next. Whether you stay human or eventually choose otherwise, whether we hide here forever or rebuild Thornwood into something new, whether Cassian, she pressed a finger to his lips. You're spiraling. He caught her hand, kissed her palm. I'm terrified. I haven't been terrified in a century. Good. That means you care. Too much. I care too much. If something happens to you, then you'll deal with it. The same way you've dealt with everything else, by surviving, by fighting, by being stubborn and impossible and refusing to let the darkness win. She yawned, her words slurring with fatigue. We'll face it together. Whatever comes, together, Cassian repeated, as if testing the word. I'd forgotten what that felt like. Get used to it. Ilara's eyes drifted closed. You're stuck with me now. Gladly. He pulled her impossibly closer, and the last thing she heard before sleep claimed her was his whispered confession. I think I'm falling in love with you, and I don't know if that's the bond or just you, but either way, I'm yours, for however long you'll have me. She smiled against his chest. Forever sounds good. Forever, he agreed softly, watching her slip into dreams while dawn broke outside a sunrise he'd never see, holding the one thing that made his darkness bearable. A human woman, who chose him anyway.